Hey everybody, this is Eddy Dacius. We're here for another episode. This is our 43. Yeah, we have 43 episodes so far. We have a great guest. Her name is François. Princess Francois. She's gonna tell more about herself, and she's amazing. I promise you, she's amazing. We're gonna make sure we learn everything we can for an hour, but we'll definitely have a great time. So let's give pop to our sponsor. We have Dacius Facility Management. So they sponsor this episode and they will manage your property with a variety of services. Call them now 617-237-0106 or go online www.daciusfm.com.
Do you want to maximize the value of your commercial property and achieve optimal productivity and efficiency in your day-to-day business operations? That's where Dacius Facilities Management can help. DFM offers Boston area businesses help in key areas like building and preventive maintenance, handyman services, project and vendor management, and even security consulting at competitive rates. Call Dacius Facilities Management now at 617-237-0106 or visit daciusfm.com today.
Yes, the Dacius FM is the solution for all your properties. Call them now, 617-237-0106. We have Princess with us today. Princess, how are you?
Hello, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for being here with us. This is Divine Purpose Podcast. Let's start the show now.
Welcome to the Divine Purpose Podcast, where we transport you along one of the more dynamic journeys of life. Have you ever been curious to know what it takes to become a successful leader? Or about knowing the secrets of life through the Bible? How about engaging in conversation where no topics are off limits? We will take you to new levels with guests who can help you grasp the importance of your calling. Now, here's your host, Eddy Dacius, founder of Dacius Facilities Management.
Yes, like promised, we have Princess Francois with us, also known as Franny the Traveler, and she's a national award-winning educational leader, equity advocate, and travel blogger, and content creator. She was born in New York, especially in Brooklyn, and Princess is extremely proud of her Caribbean roots as a first generation Haitian American. Yeah.
Yes.
Hey, Princess, tell us more about you. What can you tell us about you today?
Yes. So as you mentioned, I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. I grew up with a Haitian mother, so that is proud through and through.
Yeah.
Because of that, I think she instilled the power of education on me. Like I watched her go to classes and attend college as I was a student in middle school and elementary school. And so I think that's where my love for education and the passion to learn came from. So in college, I made it to Columbia University. I was a pre-med student while I was at Columbia. And so after Columbia, I actually became a teacher through a program called Teach for America. And so that led me to teach high school chemistry for 5 years. And then after that, I became an assistant principal of a charter high school in Brooklyn for 6 years.
Wow.
And I've literally just pivoted careers at the end of May. So now I am a nonprofit executive director of an organization that helps first generation low-income college students persist through college and increase their economic mobility.
Wow. That's a lot, Princess. And congratulations for all your success. So let's talk about, but take us to that journey. What was the household dynamic?
So I was born in Brooklyn, New York. I grew up, literally, it was just my mother and I. So I am the only child to my
Okay.
mother. And my mom single-handedly raised me. We came from very humble beginnings. I do have a massive extended family. Like I have 30 plus first cousins. Because
Wow.
and I processed this because when I got married last year, we took a group family photo and there were nearly 50 people in this family
Oh
photo.
man. Wow. That's funny. I know our Asian, we are, that's a big family. I know big family. Same for my wife. She has a big family too. So let's going up with you and her mom, and you just mentioned you saw her like value education.
Yes.
The question for me is, what are the three most challenging event in your life, and how do they challenge you?
Yes. So I would say, so one big challenge, one of the biggest challenges I had in my life was when I was in college. I was a pre-med student at Columbia. So being in an institution that was a predominantly white institution. So when we
Mm,
think of Columbia, we often think in New York City, it's pretty diverse. However, I would say that people were in their pockets. There weren't necessarily as much of the fully mix and mingling. And while I was in college, I was also working part time as
yeah.
well, 10 to 12 hours a week. I was also volunteering in a hospital because, like I said, I wanted to be pre med. So I was trying to do all the things. I was a leader of an
Mm,
organization. So trying to balance all that while maintaining the grades, being at an Ivy League was a lot to juggle for sure. And also at times feeling, that imposter syndrome of, do I belong in this space? Like,
yeah.
so there were times where I questioned in terms of, okay, like, do I deserve to be here? Especially when, you see where other people came from in terms of their background. So that was one moment I would say has been a big challenge that I was able to successfully go through. Um, I think a second moment was actually right after college. So Teach for America and my first 2 years of teaching, I would argue was some of the hardest years in my career, like in general. Many people would describe Teach for America as being the equivalent of being in a military boot camp. And why that's the case is because the schools you're teaching at are very underserved. They're not putting you in a school where there's all these resources to support you. And so as a result, you're serving so many different roles to the students you have. So the fortunate part, I was serving literally in the community that I came from. So I saw myself in many of the students. But it was just hard of, okay, I have to go make photocopies, outside because like our copier isn't working, or I'm working endless hours to plan lessons and grade papers, but I'm also going to grad school for my master's degree so I can continue teaching. And then even just the
Yeah.
system, like New York City as an education system
Wow.
has so much bureaucracy that you're
You're
up
right.
against. So that I think was a very pivotal time in my life, but it
Yeah.
also led me to decide to shift from pursuing being a doctor to now staying in education and having that impact.
Thank you, Princess, for well elaborated your path. But I would challenge you with this question. You went pre-med school, right? And you change it. So the reason I ask is because I know Haitian family,
Oh yes.
the best jobs are to be a lawyer, a doctor, you name it. But what happened for you to kind of change it, and what was the support level to allow you to
Yeah.
change it?
So I think it took a while to come to this opinion. So my first year, honestly, I wanted to quit teaching after a few months. Like January, my first year teaching, I was ready to get out of this. Like
Oh wow.
I was ready to quit. But there came a moment where, so it's like after my second year teaching, that summer was the time where it's like, okay, I need to start studying for the MCATs. Like if med school is going to be a thing, I had a free MCAT class. And so I honestly had the tools to, make it happen. But what I noticed is I was no longer interested. When I was sitting in Starbucks trying to do these MCAT questions, I no longer felt interested in studying for the MCAT. And so where I had to do some deep reflection was, why is that? And so I began to realize I was more interested in helping other people pursue med school and become a doctor versus pursuing it myself. Like being in the hospital no longer interested me. So I took a leap of faith. What ended up happening, my principal saw something in me. She pushed me to apply to a leadership program for a second master's. I said, I'm going to apply to this one program. If I get in, that is my journey. That is like God telling me that this is the path you're going to go. If I don't get in, then that means you need to buckle down and figure out this med school MCAT situation. So I got into the program and I've never looked back.
So let's go back to your favorite child memory, and having a big family. I'm guessing you're gonna have a lot. So can you share a few with us today?
Yeah, so one childhood memory I remember is we used to gather at my aunt's house a lot, and also one of my uncles too, for parties. So there was a big barbecue where all the cousins came out. You have aunts, you have uncles, and you got the compa music playing, you got the grill going. And this also is a hilarious moment because this is where I realized Haitian people run on some really late time. Like we were supposed to be there 5 p.m. I arrived with my mother. It's 8 p.m. Mind you, the grill didn't even start yet. So
Wow.
I was like, oh, this is how we party here in Haitian families. Like we're just going to be really late.
Wow. No, you're right. Because that's something, that's not a good sign, like a plus for us, but we don't cover the time well. It's like I have a friend who always said, if we go to a party, he says, this is not Haitian time, it should be American time, so make sure you guys be on time. Yeah.
And with that, I remember another big moment where one of my cousins got married. I think I must have been in middle school at this point. So they gave and it was a beautiful event. It was in New Jersey. Like I said, moments like weddings is where you get the whole family together. Yeah. But I also remember a moment where we all arrived and then our cousins announced of like, oh, you are all on time. Meaning like they gave a time 2 hours earlier than what the wedding was supposed to start, knowing people were going to arrive late.
No, you're right. And that's something we can get better at. And I think as people, we have some bad moment, but definitely that's something
I view it as funny moments. I just view it as like, I think we just it's like island time. Like it's a more leisurely place. We're not like in a rush, but it brings to good comedy when I look back at these moments. Yes,
and I agree with you too, because me growing up, the same thing. We're not washing like the here. So now let's talk about the American culture and the Haitian culture. Right. The reason I asked this question is to relate to the time. Like people say time is money, but in Haiti, we don't talk like that, Right. So how did you adjust to that mindset?
I mean, I think there are just moments where when you're in school and in work where you're just called out for being late. Like I remember, for example, when I first started my position as an assistant principal, I was living far away from that school. And so there would be moments where I would be showing up late into a meeting, which is not a good look, right? Because you're supposed to be one of the school leaders. And so having your manager have that tough conversation of, no, like being early is essentially being on time, and being
Yeah.
on time is essentially being late, and you need to figure it out. If that means leaving 30 minutes earlier, an
Early.
hour earlier, that you have to make it work. And so realizing in American culture, people pay very close attention to when people arrive into big spaces, into small spaces,
Yeah.
and having that awareness, I think, has been something that has been ingrained into me over time. And I feel like sometimes I'm code switching through it, right? Because if it is a family event, or when I'm with my mother still has, the tendencies of, like, of course, I mean, she's born in Haiti, in terms of time is not as much a concept of like what it means to be on time,
Yeah.
versus in my professional
Profession. Yeah.
life, time is everything. But
Yeah.
to my personal life with friends, I also notice such a big difference of how my friends operate. Like, some of them are the stickler of time,
Yes.
and there's other friends where they're going to show up an hour late. So when I plan a personal event, I'm like, I tell people at least 30 minutes earlier what the
Early.
time is,
Yeah.
anticipating that.
Yeah. No. No. I think that makes sense. Let's go to this question. What is the best compliment you ever gotten?
Ooh, I've never been asked this question before. Um, I think the best compliment I've ever received. Whew, this is really hard. So I can remember a moment actually of this. So in my organization, we do something called PPV, public and private victory. So I host workshops in front of 300 plus people every month.
Okay.
And there was a college student, Black and female, also interested in the sciences. She got up and said, I want to give a PPV to Princess because she's the perfect example of what it means to be a Black woman who's
Mm,
always pursuing her dreams. And
wow.
she showed me that it doesn't stop after you finish college, that as life continues, you're always going to have goals where you're going to push after. And she showed me what is possible for me as a Black woman.
Wow. Nah, that's a nice, very nice compliment. Let's go to this question. I feel like people is exactly when like writers, people who have books, they go to a process of they blocking out everything to
Mm.
focus on their craft and
Oh,
then
I
producing
did
that.
that actually.
So yeah, take us to that process.
That's a great question because this is so relevant and timely. So, um, I just came out with a book that was released this past month. However, prior to that, I spent 6 months completely off social media. So I'm very big on Instagram and blogging because I showcase travel content to people.
Yeah.
What does it look like to travel the world? And so I usually am one who's posting every day. And back in February, I had announced to everyone I'm going on a social media break, um, taking a hiatus. I originally just intended it to be for around Lent because this is the second time where for Lent I give up social media. But as I was working towards completing the book, I could not bring myself to get back on social media. And so I literally went into hibernation for 6 months. Like, the only people
Mm,
who I was interacting with were either close friends or my husband or my mother.
yeah.
So, like, if you know me in real life, text me. Or I would go on walks and I would have phone calls with people,
Yeah.
which people don't do phone calls
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
It's a lost art.
Yeah.
But in terms of, I was literally like, I not a single post on Instagram, on Facebook. I deleted all those apps off my phone. The only thing I would be doing is watching YouTube videos, but I wouldn't really comment. And I used the LinkedIn because it was more from my professional job
Professional. Yeah.
versus as a platform for social media. So when I came back on social media, it was 6 full months of not being on it. And what I noticed is like I had so many DMs. People were like, "Where are you? Is everything okay?" Because
Yeah.
people felt like I fell off the face of the earth. But then when I came in and saying like, okay, I pivoted jobs, I'm now in a doctorate program, I published a book, people now began to understand why I disappeared off the face of the earth for 6 months.
No, and I think you have to take this break because mental and allow you to focus more. Let's go to your high school and the process of you choosing a college. I don't know if you applied to many colleges or if it was one. What was the process to choose Columbia University?
Yeah, and it's interesting because I have not thought about this in a really long time. So I went to an all girls Catholic high school in Brooklyn, New York.
Yeah,
So when it came to the application process for college, we had, one counselor where you would go to who would help with that. For me, I was looking at mostly colleges in New York and then
yeah,
also a little bit of New Jersey and Connecticut. I applied to a lot of colleges actually. And Columbia was the only Ivy League I had applied to. I
okay,
also at that time applied to some programs that had a combination of college and med school
yeah,
together. And they were very selective. And I actually got into those. Like I got into one where they only took 17 people and it was
yeah,
an 8-year college med school program, and one college that was a 7-year program of college and medicine. But why I ended up selecting Columbia is where I realized I wanted more of the traditional college life of having the opportunities to be
mm,
able to live on campus. Because in those programs, I was going to have to commute, an hour plus, each way to get to them
wow,
because of where they're located. And so I realized I couldn't see myself doing that for another 7 to 8 years. I'm like, this is the only opportunity where I can have the full college
yeah,
experience, being on campus, being on the dorms, the parties and all of that. And many of my friends were part of that commuter world. And I realized we had very different experiences in college. And it was such a big deal to get into Columbia too, because being in an all girls small high school, there was the fact that no one had gotten into
yeah,
an Ivy League in 10 years from my high
mm,
school.
wow,
Then also being a Black woman in a school that's predominantly white, I think
yeah,
many people doubted me too. And there was a person, so I graduated valedictorian. There was a person in my
mm,
school where she got waitlisted. So behind my back, she was also making comments of like she only got in because Black, poor, and affirmative action. So I
oh.
feel like coming to Columbia was also very symbolic to prove of like I did this for myself. I deserve to be in this space, so I'm going to go to this school.
Nah, that's well too. Very. I'm happy to hear that, and as Haitian too, that's like we Haitian, we work hard and we promote great, and we try to be successful in everything we do.
Exactly.
So let's switch to. I heard something. College parties, So let's talk about some experience. So how was it for you? Your college experience?
Yeah, so it's so funny because even though Columbia is in New York City, it felt like a completely different world than
Wow.
growing up in Brooklyn, in Little Haiti, in the Little Caribbean. Because of it was located in Upper Manhattan. When you enter the campus, it feels like you're not in New York City. It feels like, I don't know, you're in Connecticut or I don't know, the middle of nowhere.
Nowhere, yeah.
But then it's also a different population of people. Like I was meeting people from literally all over the world there. And so that was the cool part. But what I noticed, so the good parts was I'm meeting all these new people. I also found people who had similar backgrounds to me because I did an academic success program.
Okay.
And so it was like a group where you also had other students of color at Columbia. We were together for 6 weeks for a summer. So I think my adjustment to Columbia was a lot smoother than what it may have been for other people. Because what I noticed is people who didn't have that struggled more, especially if they were a person of color, because it's just a very different dynamic of people. Like what they like to do for fun wasn't always what I like to do for fun. But this group of people is like, oh, we love the Caribbean party vibes, right?
Yeah.
And so it was fun in that we had the Caribbean Student Association on campus, and they put a party once a semester, and it was soca music, you know, reggae, dancehall, like all the tunes. And so that was like the really fun part. The parts that aren't as glamorous is, you know, there's a lot of all-nighters being pulled. Like there were many times I left the library 6 a.m, you know, because of, you know, wanting to do my best. And I really was committed. And then also certain classes, you know, especially the science classes, I wasn't seeing as many folks of color in those classes. And so that made it harder as a pre-med too, which is why I became president of a minority pre-med society to help us become doctors, because I realized that we're not as represented in this organic chemistry class or in this biochemistry class. Like we're going to be one of a few. Or, you know, some classes you may be the only Black person and they're looking to you, you know, when the Haitian Constitution comes up in the curriculum of like, oh, I'm supposed to be the spokesperson for all the Black people in this class.
Yeah. But no, that's good to hear, and thank you for sharing. One thing I will ask is, do you feel like as Haitian, we involuntary forced to carry our heritage, where people assume it's like, oh, you're Haitian, you should know this, or you should do this?
I don't have as much of that experience. What I more experience is that as Haitians, we have so much pride in our culture. I think we know our contributions to, you know, world history and, you know, the Haitian Revolution and all of that. But I think what we do as a Haitian people is like sometimes we put unnecessary pressure on ourselves. I think as a people, we're very committed and we represent excellence, but sometimes it comes at the expense of our own, you know, work-life balance and mental health and all of that.
Yeah, and I will agree with you. Let's talk about which of your accomplishment you the proudest.
Yes. So I think my biggest accomplishment to date has been as an assistant principal, because that was the time where I received so I think the impact I had the most was as a teacher, but the proudest moment I had in my career though was I unexpectedly received a national award that's only given to 40 educators a year. They showed up at my school. They made it seem like we were having a school assembly, and then to find out that they were giving this award and check to one person in the room. And I'm thinking it's going to one of the teachers, and they unfolded the check and it was my name. Like,
wow.
And
what a surprise.
That is what, and it's like, I've never been surprised or I feel like recognized for my impact in a way that it happened that day. And as a result, you know, they had ABC, CBS, like they had all these news channels there ready to record this moment and interview me. And I think it's opened doors for me, because even pivoting to this role as an executive director, which I love, them seeing that award on my resume was like immediately of like, okay, we want to interview her.
So always this like life changing, because I know especially us people, like you didn't expect something, but you have to kind of strive to it and then get adjusted, do your best, and as I can speculate, you're probably gonna do your homework and to make sure you be your best. How was it for you, that experience?
Yeah, I think like you mentioned, like life changing, and then there's like a pivot that has to happen. So even, well, first when I think of like getting the award itself, there was a life change in terms of people started recognizing me on the street of like, oh, you were that person on the TV channel that I saw. And then you go into your head of like, okay, like, do I deserve this award? Like, again, sometimes that imposter syndrome creeps in.
Yeah.
And then when I think of now pivoting careers, it's so different being in a school setting versus being in a nonprofit. And so this is like 6 months into the role in terms of like, taking workshops and learning from all the staff members, because as you said, you want to put your best foot forward and make sure you're fully prepared for this role.
You tapped to something that people are dealing with a lot now, which is the imposter syndrome. When did you realize you made it?
That's a great question. I think the first moment I realized, well, one, I think getting into Columbia was a huge moment. I mean, if you know the stats of like, it's less than, it's like 6-7% of people who get in. I think that was the first moment I realized of, okay, my hard work and my intelligence is not just confined to this school. Like this large institution recognizes that. I think, where I feel like I ultimately made it also was when I became an assistant principal. To make that jump from being a teacher to an assistant principal, I had to get 2 master's degrees in order to do that. But to have someone, a school recognize if she can be a school leader, especially I was young when I did that. So when you think of your average principal or assistant principal, a lot of times they're in their late 30s and their 40s. I became an assistant principal when I was like 25, 26. That is very young. So to then think I've had this tremendous impact on education and think about it of like, okay, but I'm still, in my early 30s and this is the impact that I've already have. Like there's only so much more room for the next, 15, 20 years.
No, that's good. And so what was your support? I know this question is related to we Haitian as like a community, but we sometimes don't like to see people striving or people get to their peak in terms of success. Can you talk about your support level, how your family, your husband, people around you, your circle supported you in this time?
Yeah, so I think I'm very intentional of who I keep around me in my circle. So my mom has always been my biggest cheerleader and support, and literally has sacrificed so much in order for me to get here. I think over time I came to learn of who my friends are and who are not, because to your point, I didn't necessarily find that among family members or the Haitian community, but what I found out is that sometimes some friends are like, you think they're rooting for you, but behind the scenes they're like talking a whole bunch of crap. But I think it comes out of insecurity. So I've definitely have had some friendships where it lasted, from elementary school to college, but after graduating college, there definitely was a drop off of certain people in my life. But now I have an amazing group of friends who are my bridesmaids in my wedding. And I think what I realized is when you're looking at friends, you need to get people who also want to be at the same level as you. Yeah. So when I look at the groups who I have one friend who's a founding principal of a school. I have another friend who is a lawyer who graduated, who was at Columbia, went to NYU Law. I have another friend, she's also Haitian American too. She recently graduated as a doctor. She was in that very pre-med society I was with, and we also went to Columbia. So you have to have people who also are equally as ambitious, so they're cheering for you versus hating on you. And then my husband has been like, I don't even know. Like he is so supportive. Like he edits my papers for grad school, and
Wow.
it's also helpful to have a husband who's also in the field of education. So he also understands, the struggle and the drama, and he's also first generation, American too. So he comes from, Dominican descent, and so I think we have also a lot of like similarities too that help us really, like, we're a support system for each other.
Wow. Thank you, Princess. So really appreciate it. So let's go to our break now. So we have Eddy Dacius with Divine Purpose Podcast with our special guest, Princess François. We appreciate it. All right, we're back with Princess. So this question we're gonna get to hot topic. Hopefully you receive a question. So hot topic is a great segment. But before we do, what do people misunderstand about you most?
Oh, and it's funny because I actually had this discussion with a friend recently. I think sometimes my passion in terms of how I speak gets misunderstood in terms of me being argumentative. Sometimes I think so. I bring Leo energy. Leo's like, we can be loud and proud. As Haitians, we're loud and proud. And so I think sometimes it gets assumed that you're trying to start an argument versus no, I'm just really passionate about making this point. I'm not trying to argue with you, but I'm just very adamant about this point.
No, that's the thing, and I think I can relate to that because sometimes we just take a position, but that doesn't mean we want to fight, or we just very passionate and we want to make sure we make our point, right? So, so what do you wish you knew when you first started your career? Like one thing I'll say, if I knew this, I'll be better now. But is there anything you wish you knew before you started this journey?
I think the biggest thing doesn't directly relate in the professional sense. I think what it is you need to make time for yourself. I think you can get so caught up in terms of like you wanting to put in the extra hours and the hard work, but honestly, sometimes that comes at the expense of our health. And so needing, like, how important that health is wealth, and that you're not going to be able to push forward if you're not in the best health and not sacrificing health for the sake of your career. I wish I internalized that more at the beginning part of my career.
So let's go to this question. What piece of advice you will give somebody who's starting the career now?
I think one piece of advice I would give is you need to network. And network doesn't mean just going to a conference or going to events. Are you actually talking with people who work in your organization, who work in your school? So I have, for example, my team is made up of many young people where this is their first job. And so I'm constantly pushing them in terms of, are you having informational interviews with, the CEO of our organization, as well as, the person who does marketing, as well as, the person who's handling grants, because at this point you also have to be open-minded. I am the advocate of that. What you think you're going to do with your life is probably where you're not going to end up with. And so in order for you to actually discover what you're passionate about, what you need to pursue, you need to be talking to different people to figure out, okay, what aspect of their job do I love? Can I see myself doing that for another 5 to 10 years? And then not being afraid to go with the flow of opportunity. That is literally the quote and life advice I follow for myself. Go with the flow of opportunity, which is how I ended up moving from a school to a nonprofit. Because I saw myself of, I will be working in the school, move up as principal, move up as superintendent. Now I realize there's a whole world out there beyond just education that I never considered before.
So let me follow up with this question. What was your dream job in high school?
My dream job was to be a doctor. Everyone knew me as the science nerd. I was the one killing it in chemistry. I was even called Alberta Einstein. Like, that's how much I was into the sciences. I thought I was going to be a pediatric doctor working with kids. In college, I was like, I'm going to be an endocrinologist, pediatrician. So it was like, I love chemistry. I like medicine makes sense. You're going to help people.
Yeah. And
the Haitian thing of like doctor is one of the things that you do, right?
Yeah, we definitely like to push our kids or our people to go to those traditional career, which is they are great, and I applaud everybody who can make it. At the end of the day, be flexible, and you just said something. Go with the flow, right?
Go with the flow of opportunity.
Of opportunity. So let's get to our topics now. Our topic. All right, Princess. So I'm gonna give you time. Take your time, and I know you, educator. You're a writer. You're not gonna be shy for words. So, how important is it for you as a Black woman to succeed?
Can you repeat the question?
How important is it for you?
How important? Okay.
How important is it for you as a Black woman to succeed?
Extremely important. I think sometimes it's so important that I put too much pressure on myself, because when I think of success for a Black woman, I think we're also in a place where we still don't see much of ourselves. So I feel like I'm always trying to be a change maker or a trailblazer, or trying to be, the first in a specific space. So for me, success is so important, because I also feel like being an educator, there's so many students who are looking at every move I'm doing and looking at my success as an example.
So, and I will stress it more, because now we see a trending. A lot of women are elevated in more opportunities. What would be the message for? I have a daughter. Maybe in 10 years she's watching this episode. What would be the message you would be sharing to a Black Haitian American woman to focus and to be proud of who they are and dream big?
I think the message would be, you come from amazing ancestors. You got so many ancestors, from Black ancestors to your Haitian ancestors, that's made so many sacrifices in order for you to be as successful as possible. So success is literally ingrained in your blood. So whatever it is that you want, just know, and people are going to tell you it's not the case, because there's going to be haters out there, but you are capable of literally anything and everything you want, because you have the foundation in order to make that success possible.
And well said, I agree. So this question will go for you, and I don't know if you work from home, remotely, if it's hybrid, if you go to the office. There used to be that saying, leave work at work, right? So now work is at home. How do you balance life now?
No, I mean, even so, when I was working in a school, obviously that was fully in person. The work did not also stay at home either, because I think, one, if you're super passionate about the work, two, it's also one of those things, if you want to make it to a certain level, just putting in minimum hours is not going to help you get to like that level of success as quickly. But now so I work in a hybrid role. So I work remotely 4 days a week, and then I'm in the office 1 to twice a week, depending on if there's an event happening. And so I do find that struggle more in terms of having work not bleed into your personal time. So what helps me is I have an office, at least in my like place. So I separate where I do work versus, where I'm sleeping. Although sometimes I will do work from the sofa, and that's okay because it's just more leisurely and more comfortable. But I think what I need to work on more is how to have the cutoff on time so it doesn't feel like you're working 12 hours because you're like, okay, I'm just going to go take a break, or I'm going to go do a walk, or let me do this errand. It's very easy to lose track of time when you're working remotely.
And I usually ask this question to most of our guests. What was the pandemic for you?
So the pandemic for me, so one thing is, so in the beginning of the pandemic, it was rough because, so at this time, my husband and I were engaged, but we weren't necessarily living together. And he had caught COVID early on, actually. So I was making the sacrifice in terms of trying to protect my mom, who's immunocompromised, and also his parents. So we did not see each other for 3 months. Like, it was just virtual interactions because of just concern of safety. I think pandemic wise, I wasn't the person who felt like, oh my God, I just miss seeing so many people in person. I actually enjoyed the pandemic because it made me realize how much more of an introvert than I come across, because I restore energy by being to myself, by, watching TV. And so it allowed me to not have to feel guilty for not seeing people because we just couldn't see people. And it allowed me to be able to care for myself and have a better routine. So in many ways, I actually enjoyed the work-life balance I had during the pandemic because my school also went remote for a year and a half.
Okay. All right, that's kind of help it too. That was hot topic with Princess. I think that was great. So let's go to your book. I know you want to promote your book. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, so I literally released a book a month ago from yesterday. It is called Support Black, period. So emphasis on that, a green book to eliminate your ifs, ands, or buts. And so this is not your modern day green book. So for those who don't know, the regular green book that came out, decades ago was meant to be a listing of places that are safe for Black people to go, from hotels to restaurants to businesses. This modern day green book is a list of Black owned businesses, from Black coffee shops to Black tea houses to Black wine, Black ice cream, Black festivals, Black museums. So anything I feel like you're interested, you're going to find something in this. But it's not just a resource. It also is a framework that helps shift people's mindsets. So there's 5 steps in terms of how you can support the Black community. And I also embed a lot of personal stories. I also embed a lot of history that's not taught in your textbooks into this book. So it's not just the list of businesses. It's actually a really interesting read.
How long did it take you to publish it?
So it took about 2 years from the time that I had the inception of the idea. But I would say, remember, we talked about like the last 6 months being the buckling down. The last 6 months is where I would say the majority of the book was completed in terms of the written manuscript. And then during that time, working with a Black woman to help get it published in terms of the cover and distribution to Amazon and other places.
Wow. Let's talk about travel. And I know you. So usually, I would still ask you this question: What are the 3 books you will comment? We will comment our audience. I will add place to travel.
Yes.
In that too. So 3 books or place to travel you will comment to our audience.
So being a big traveler, so I've been to 30 countries, 35 states. I have a lot of places I can put there. So I'm going to give both domestic and international recommendations. So in terms of 3 international destinations, I put Haiti on there, and I know I'm being biased, but why I put that on the top of the list is because what the media shows you is not what it looks like when you get there. Haiti has some of the most beautiful beaches that are untouched that people do not realize. But then Haiti also has rich history. So going to see the Citadel and, learning that history, I think is also very important for anyone to even understand Latin American history. You can't understand. I would also say, so if I think of a European place that I really loved and would recommend, it would be Oslo, Norway. So they are so efficient in terms of how they operate and their public transportation, and also Iceland too. Like they also, they have that socialism idea of that, the government pays for your colleges, but it's also super clean. People are super nice. And in Norway specifically, it's a lot more diverse than you would assume. So so that's why I tell people this, because I thought it was just going to be, just a bunch of Scandinavians, Norwegians. What I realized, I was seeing people in hijabs. I was seeing interracial couples. And so I learned after 30% of their population are now immigrants. So I was seeing murals of a Black man and an astronaut. That's the last thing I would have thought, going to Norway. And then I would say the third international is Senegal. I think it's just important to get to the motherland.
Really?
But Senegal I put on there because Senegal is one of the more developed African countries. So if you're a person where you're like, okay, maybe I'm like afraid to get to the continent, Senegal is a good entry point where there's a lot of history, a lot of rich food. There's beaches too. People don't think of beaches with Senegal. And like I said, they have a really good infrastructure over there.
Coming from New York, I know the transportation is, I don't know how to put it, but traveling probably to, you said 30 countries. Which country has the best infrastructure in terms of transportation, in your opinion?
Oslo, Norway. That's why I'm recommending, when I say infrastructure, so, they have subways, buses, trolleys, they run exactly to time. So if they tell you that the bus is arriving 2:50 on Google Maps, if you are not there at 2:50, you will be left. This is not where New York, where that bus is probably going to come, 10 to 15 minutes later. They also have frequent transportation. So it's not being in a place where, okay, maybe you have to wait an hour for a train. I felt like trains were coming every 2 to 3 minutes. And it was very easy to navigate. Like, it's very easy to figure out how to get from one place to another on public transportation. Because a lot of times I would opt into Ubers or having a driver depending on the international place because they don't have good public transportation. Also, Norway was top notch for infrastructure.
How long is the flight?
I think it was about 7 to 8 hours direct from JFK.
Okay. All right, makes sense. Is there a question you wish I asked you today?
No, I think I will say you asked very unique questions that people typically have not asked me because, I always expect the questions of, what is your, where are you from? What is your journey? How did you get here? But you asked very unique questions. So I don't think so. I think you asked very well-rounded questions.
Appreciate it. So this will be my last question. What is the future holds for you, Princess?
That's a great question. I think when I think of what the future holds for me, I hope to continue to have an impact both in the education space and then also in the travel space as well. So I'm just going to speak to existence in terms of, this book being, a bestseller at some point, and it also shifts people mindsets in terms of how they support the Black community. And then when I think of my impact in the education space, I think who knows, like one day you might find me as CEO of a nonprofit, or I open my own company as well.
And I wish you the best. And you put it in the universe.
Oh, and completing my doctorate. So in a few years, it will be Dr. Princess Francois.
Oh wow! And I wish you success and definitely great journey. So one thing I take away from this episode, our conversation, is that you value education and you're proud of who you are and you're promoting success not for you but for everybody around you. That's like I make it. That's a calling. I think you embrace your calling. So some people still figure it out, but I think you get to it and you're gonna strive because the mission is to help others.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I would agree. I think I definitely found my calling and there's an alignment. And so I just want to thank you in terms of you found your calling in terms of elevating other people's voices and their journeys.
Last word for you.
I'm sorry.
Last
word. Oh yeah. So I think, like I said, thank you so much for having me on this podcast. I hope, my story, inspires you for you to see that anything is possible and also realize that life is not linear. So I'm just going to end with, as I started in the middle of the combo, just be open to follow the flow of opportunity.
Before I let you go, because we have a few minutes, any best movies?
Oh, I mean, I think I love Black Panther, so that's a given. And I'm also my two other favorite movies are like the Harry Potter series.
Yes.
I have watched every single movie, and I like did a whole marathon of the whole thing last year. Yes,
Wow.
like I actually rewatched every movie. And I also love the movie with Meryl Streep. I think it's The Devil Wears Prada.
Yeah, I think it's a nice movie too. Thank you, Princess. We appreciate the time, and I think we had a great time with you, and we enjoyed this conversation. And we'll keep in touch. Good luck on your success and everything, your family and your book. So we hope to see it as a bestseller soon.
Yes, thank you so much.
All right, this is Eddy Dacius with Divine Purpose Podcast. We had Princess Francois with us. She laid it out, everything in terms of her journey, her passion, and things she's passionate about, and things she wants to do. Please check us online, www.dppodcast.com. You can listen to this episode on all major platforms. Our audio, it's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Podbean, and definitely on YouTube. This is Eddy Dacius with Princess Francois. Thank you. Appreciate it.